Paid for by Marjan Philhour for Supervisor 2020. Financial disclosures are available at sfethics.org. Hi, everyone. I'm Marjan Philhour, running for Supervisor here in the Richmond District. But today I'm really excited to welcome Michelle Parker and Rachel G. To Zoom to talk about, hello, ladies, to talk about something that is affecting us, whether or not you have kids in school during this pandemic. We are all affected by what happens in our local schools this coming fall, and especially we've all experienced the effects of what happened in our local schools this past spring. And so today we are going to talk about the future of local education, but also what things might look like come the fall, and what we're hearing from our neighbors, so much of that, with regard to the safety of teachers and the safety of our kids and the safety of parents, just all of us as a community are things that really need to be at the forefront of our discussion. And so, as I said, I'm just so honored to be here with the two of you, immersed in our community and our schools. Michelle Parker, who's running for school board, she's on the November ballot this year, who has a wealth of experience, not just as a mom raising 3 kids through our school system, but also as someone who understands deeply the policies that affect our neighborhood schools and also citywide. And also Rachel, who is also a mom here in the Richmond, who's raising her kids here and is very active in the school parent group, and hears a lot from parents every day, and is also going through the experience of being a parent at this time, where we're really kind of partnering with our teachers to educate our kids, not just in academics, but in social interactions. And so welcome, both of you. If you want to, Michelle, you want to talk a little bit about yourself and your campaign and what your priorities are?
Sure. Thanks, Marjan, for the invitation. I always welcome an opportunity to talk about our schools and our kids and how we can work together to make this better for all of us and for our whole city. So as you said, I am a parent in the schools. My oldest is now going to be a junior in college, and my youngest will be a junior in high school. So I've been part of our schools for a really long time and have had a lot of different roles in them. Had leading up school parent groups and been part of the district PTA for many years, kind of off and on, and have been really driven by advocacy efforts to help get more funding to our schools, but also to help ballot measures that will really impact our kids, to help keep them safe and healthy, and just a whole myriad of different efforts, and have been the chair of an oversight committee over our parcel tax we passed in 2008, and right now I'm the chair of the charter school oversight committee for the school district, and just worn a lot of different hats. And I'm back running for school board again because I fundamentally believe that education is how we strengthen our communities and provide better futures for our kids. It's just fundamentally what I believed. I went through public schools growing up. My kids have been in public schools for their entire growing up years. And this is where we can fix all of the systemic problems we have, the inequities that are there that are affecting some students more than others, and we just get them a really great start. And so there's just that belief that drives me in general. And there's a few different things we need to do in our schools here. Some of them have risen to the top around making them financially secure and supporting kids through the crisis we are in with the pandemic, but also making sure we can have stability in our teacher workforce and closing some of the opportunity gaps that we see a lot of our students having. So I can talk about all of those more a little later if we have time, but there's a lot that brings me here. I'm pretty passionate about it. So
well, thank you. Thank you for throwing your hat in the ring. Thank you for getting your name out there and for standing up for families, not just in the Richmond, but in San Francisco as well. So thank you. And Rachel, how about you tell me about yourself and what you've been experiencing as a parent and kind of the challenges that are coming at you?
So for right now, I have a child in 4th grade. He'll be in 4th grade this coming fall. And then I have a daughter who's about to enter 6th grade. So that to me is a big concern because it's a new environment. And just the wondering of what all of this is going to look like has really inspired me to be here and speak up and voice out the concerns a lot of other parents may be thinking about, but not sure how to quite say it or how to project whatever their concerns are. I'm very excited because in addition to being a parent, I'm also a school teacher. I have had the experience of being a teacher for the past 15 years. And so I know that as a PTA member or as a parent in the Unified School District, teachers also put in a lot of work and a lot of time and energy. And as a parent, I want to make sure that we also provide that support for our teachers and for the administration in whatever our school will look like in this coming school year. So I'm very excited to be here to share my perspective.
Thank you. And that's certainly a unique perspective as both a parent and educator. So, thank you. First question for both of you, there are so many, there's so much uncertainty about reopening school with the COVID pandemic still raging. Even as a city, we were slowly reopening, and that's been somewhat put on pause in some areas. So in my experience, when things are so unsettled, it's important to outline a set of key values that can guide decision making. So what key values do you think SFUSD should keep in mind as decisions are made? You want to start, Michelle?
Sure. There are so many considerations, but I think, of course, first is keeping everybody safe. Both our students, making sure that as they go, that they can feel safe and are safe, and that they're not bringing home something to family members. So many of our families live in intergenerational households. They live with people who are immunocompromised. And so we have to keep students safe so that they can also go home and have their family safe. If
that's our house.
Yeah, I mean, it's tons of houses around our city, right? But also our staff, right? Because there's a lot of talk about maybe the virus doesn't transmit as much around young children, but our children are in schools with adults.
Right.
And so we have to make sure that the adults are also safe, and many of them are also immunocompromised or in other situations with people who they live with. So we have to keep safety at the very top of our list. And then I think also right in sync with that is keeping equity front and center. And so we have some families who are just, and students who just have been historically underserved, and making sure that that they have the access they need to. Our district was great about quickly making sure people had access to food and had access to technology and Wi-Fi, and that was a massive project for the first few weeks. But beyond that, the opportunities and situations our students find themselves in, we have to make sure that those gaps that exist don't grow larger in the middle of this. So I would say those are probably two top priorities. And there's others, but those are two.
No. Thank you. Rachel, what do you think as far as the key values that SFUSD should keep in mind while making decisions?
I completely agree with Michelle on the safety and the equity. I also think, I came up with this long list, so I know that there are a lot of different things, but I know that accountability and trust is a big deal, because there's so much uncertainty right now, and parents need to know that the intentions, that the decisions that are being made are for their best, for their safety, for their health. And so I think that's a big thing. And how can they show that? By showing that they have a plan in place that can be worked through, that they're prepared. I think those are really important values. And also, I think the heart of the matter, empathy and humility. I think as leaders of the Unified School District, people need to know that they're human too. They're going through these feelings and emotions. And I think the more they are able to show that, the more understanding the community will be in regards to whatever decisions they make in opening up the schools.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So, I mean, just to dovetail on that, and I'll start with you since you kind of touched upon it, like what in your view are some of the main concerns of families right now?
Well, we address the safety and the health of their children.
Yeah.
I know a lot of it is not just the physical health, but the mental health. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are so concerned about keeping them home. We saw a lot of our children kind of regress emotionally, and there were also a lot of tantrums, just because it was a lot. It was very heavy for these kids to have to take in, and they tried their best to just cope So I think that is a very big concern. And I think also job security. For a lot of the families, I think we all know a lot of our community are essential workers, teachers themselves, nurses, people who own their own stores that need to stay open.
Yeah.
And if their hours are decreased for whatever reason, how are they going to manage financially while still trying to take care of their family?
Right. Yeah. How about you, Michelle? What do you think what have you been hearing from other families?
I've heard a lot of similar things. And I would add with the stress that a lot of our families are feeling around the job. You know, there is definitely this feeling that you can have a job or you can have a kid, and there's no way that those things can sort of coexist in this moment. And so many families, parents, and caregivers are feeling inadequate in supporting at-home learning. They need some more help in figuring that out. And we as a city are going to have, they know, and they're pushing us, and they should, we have to find ways to support those essential workers. And then I would also say that a lot of concerns I'm hearing from families are around their students' individual needs. You know, we have a lot of students in the district who have special needs that are really difficult to meet in a remote learning situation, who need one-on-one attention, who their IEPs, their individual education plans have been really reduced. So those students, we have a lot of students who are English learners who have been really struggling, and they're wanting to make sure the parents are really concerned and making sure that those students don't fall behind in their ability to learn the language and progress through their academic experience. So there's a lot of special needs that have been falling through the cracks a little bit, which the district admits, and we have to figure that out. So that's a lot of families are concerned about those specific needs.
Yeah. And now, what about our teachers? I mean, we need our teachers. We need them to be able to afford to live in this city, to be able to thrive in this city. I mean, I think we've all, you know, my husband's a lifelong educator, and I have witnessed the hard work our teachers put in for all our kids. And then now that we've all been put in their shoes, right, through this pandemic, I mean, what are some of their concerns? Because I would imagine there are many, you know, even pre-pandemic, but as we move into the fall, what do you both see as, you know, teachers' concerns? When we start with Michelle and then go to Rachel.
Sure. Well, we already mentioned safety is a big concern. You know, if we have an in-person element of whatever instruction looks like next year, there definitely is a big concern there, but we covered that already. Yeah. I think the other concerns that I've heard a lot from teachers are around both having the training and skills and support they need to do their jobs, because they were never taught to do only remote instruction. And so while they may have varying degrees of skills and abilities and confidence in doing some of that, it's really different than in-person instruction. And so they need time and space and training to figure those things out. So I think there's a lot of concern there. And then also, as we look at possible models that have both an element of in-person and remote, and what if they have some students who can't be in person at all, even though that's happening, then they're being asked to do two jobs. And so they want to know, you know, rightfully, how am I supposed to manage some students who are not in my classroom and some who are, if we have an in-person component, which we may not at the beginning. But if that's the case, we're asking them to do a lot, and we need to make sure there's adequate resources for them to do their jobs. So that's what I hear a lot of concern around.
Well, and Rachel, I mean, as a teacher yourself, like, what are you and your colleagues, like, what are the top of mind, you know?
Oh, Marjan. I have been having a lot of conversation with a lot of different teachers. And I think on top of what Michelle has mentioned, a lot of it too is feeling like their voice is being considered in any aspect of this decision making. I think they feel unheard. They feel like they're just kind of like, here, this is what we're doing, figure it out. So I think that that feeling of overwhelm is already creeping up, and we haven't even started. So I think that they need someone, or they need their administration, whoever their principal is, to go to them and say, how do you feel about this, and what can we do to make it work for you and for our students? What is this? As a school community, I think it needs to be a conversation on both ends.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would I want to add to that because I've seen that also. There, we're having town halls this week for SFUSD, and there was an educator town hall on Monday, and that feeling that Rachel's describing was just prevalent from educators participating.
Yeah,
Um,
understandably.
yeah, there was a lot there, and the thing is, we also know our teachers are really creative, and so if we can make sure that they are part of the decision making, like they can, if we ask them for ideas, they're creative naturally. They'll figure out, okay, so if I have these resources, what is actually realistic and what would I feel comfortable and safe doing? And they often can come up. I mean, thankfully we have, I think there are maybe like 14 educators who are part of the working groups SFUSD has put together to determine what the plan will be. And that's great. Like, that's great that there's that many, but we have a lot of good ideas coming from teachers. And so the more we can pull those in, I think the more likely we are to find a workable situation.
Actually, can I add one more thing, Marjan?
Please, yeah.
Because families, I mean, so there's a lot of teachers who are also parents. So I think that's also a big concern. And they may not even be teaching in the same school as their children. So I think that's another concern that they have, is how are they going to manage taking care of both ends in that scenario?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Some teachers work in other districts, but their kids are in SFUSD.
Yeah.
So they'll have a completely different fall learning plan.
Right. And it's to the idea that you brought up earlier around, you can have a kid or you can have a job, but you can't have both. And how that, there's recently an article in the New York Times about that, about, the struggles of parents and also women in particular around that issue, which has become very real and even more imminent as we move into the fall. So it's something that I think has to be part of this entire conversation as we reopen schools, and the risks and the impacts of what's happening. And there doesn't really seem there are going to be sacrifices, right, for families, for educators, and it's about balancing that in the best interest of our kids and in the interest of safety for everyone. So what do you think, you touched on this a little bit, both of you, but, what do you think parents of students should keep in mind when evaluating the response of their school or of the district to the COVID pandemic and reopening? Like, what are some of the things, I know that, we're hearing a lot of different ideas and a lot of possible kind of scenarios, but what should, parents of students keep in mind?
I actually have been talking to my husband about this a lot because of our situation. We're both educators. And I think I would advise families to do the same. Have a discussion right now of the various plans that they could make in regards to what they feel comfortable doing. Because I know that even if schools open, will parents even be comfortable having their child go into the school? So I think having those real conversations with the family right now would help a lot, because then at least once the district and the schools present their plan, they're not going to be reactive to the plan, which could turn very negative immediately, but actually be more open to what are the ways that we can work through this and be more proactive for a solution that kind of meets everybody's needs.
Yeah, that's good advice. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, I agree that it will help to have some openness and also just a recognition and some patience that this is a new situation for everyone. Nobody's had to figure out how to run schools in the middle of a pandemic before, like a worldwide pandemic that's killing thousands of people, kind of a pandemic. So I think having a little bit of ability to take a breath and step back, which, in itself is frankly is a privilege, because lots of our families will be so highly and are so highly impacted by this. But I think also it will be really important to hold the district accountable to what it says its values are, and to give feedback. And so I want to see, and I think families should be looking for this in whatever plan the district proposes, is that there are regular opportunities to provide feedback and to iterate on the model as we see things are happening. So as health guidance changes, as the cases in the city change, as we see impacts on students, and are able to measure those, that there are check-in points. So we should be looking for that in a plan. What are the ways that we can measure that this is going well? What different points will there be for families to give input onto how it's going? The district has put out a survey for families to complete right now to say, this is what I'm comfortable with, these are my concerns. And so families always should take advantage of those kinds of opportunities. And if they don't see their feedback reflected some way in the plan, then they should continue to put pressure on district leadership to make sure that that consideration is made. And frankly, to their supervisors and other people in the city, because this isn't just a school district thing. This is gonna have to be a city response, city priorities taken. And so we are gonna have to, as a parent community, as a school community and teachers and everybody together, collectively hold our community responsible for prioritizing the needs of young people. So that's what I would look for, is check-in points, ways to measure success, and an opportunity to iterate as we learn new information as we move through these next few months.
That's very helpful to hear from both of you. And I'm also taking mental notes about what we have to do at home. So thank you. So let's talk about resources. You know, what can we tell parents and residents who are watching? What resources are available to working parents to help with navigating childcare and supervision during distance learning? Like sometimes, especially, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. And so sometimes, you know, childcare can be very challenging, especially while trying to kind of keep, you know, the pods kind of separate, right? So what kind of resources have you both seen out there, and what can you recommend to working parents? Rachel.
This was actually hard for me to answer in terms of just thinking about it, is because I think my situation with my husband, we have some flexibility. And I think for us, when we make our decisions, it's always about where are the kids going to end up if this happens or this happens. So it's hard for me to answer because I know that we're fortunate in that sense that I even have options. Right. And a lot of it is me being able to stay with my kids. But I know that in other places, I know that after school programs are still trying to be out there for parents who are essential workers. I know that there's going to be a big task in how they're going to manage the number of children who will need to stay after school. They might need to hire more staff just to cover all the different needs of the kids. And so I think it's a bit daunting, I think, in terms of the magnitude, because it's on top of the school situation that we have to also think about.
Right. Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. How about you, Michelle? What do you think?
This is, I think, a work in progress. I apologize, I have a phone ringing in the back.
That's okay. I usually
turn off. Yeah.
You're at home.
Yeah, so I think this is very much a work in progress. A few things to consider are, I think we have to get creative in our partnership with the Rec and Park Department. And I know that they've already been very flexible in trying to support families during the spring. And we're going to have to make sure that teachers, for instance, are classified as essential workers, and so that the childcare options that are available for city workers right now should also be options for our teachers as essential public workers. But for families, I've heard from many of the nonprofits who run after-school programs and other sort of supplemental programs in our schools, and they're just waiting for the district to make a decision so that they can then plan their options. There have been a lot of creative solutions about using outdoor spaces differently, because we do have them. We have parks in every neighborhood. Many of them are close to our schools. We have some schools that have some outdoor space, and so I think a lot of our nonprofit partners are looking to be creative about how we use those spaces and provide more options. So really, I also have a hard time fully answering this question right now because there's just so much in the air. And until we know what school looks like, we won't be able to fully answer it. But I hope that the good and creative people in the Department of Children, Youth, and their Families, and Rec and Park, and all of these partners are working together. There is actually like a community partner working group at SFUSD right now that has about 200 organizations that are part of it, who are regularly coming together over the past maybe 2 months, I think is how long it's been going, perhaps. So they're coming together talking about all of these issues. So we'll have to keep watching and seeing how it goes. And the district hopefully will be posting a lot of options on their websites, and then also each school, as they have specific partners who they work with, will also communicate that with families. But it is certainly a huge puzzle we have to figure out pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And we'll certainly be sharing those websites with our viewers and those who follow on social media, just to make sure that people know what's out there. So I guess my last question for both of you is, it's really hard to imagine right now because we're in the midst of all of this, but once COVID is over, and there will come a day, right, where we will get past this and we'll be in a kind of a new way of operating. But what are the main priorities that you think SFUSD should have moving forward post-COVID? Like, what do you think should be next on the agenda? You want to start with that, Rachel, and then we'll go to Michelle.
I think as a parent, it was really evident that there was not equal access to technological resources because of the immediate response the Unified School District had to take in order to make sure that the learning playing field was somewhat equalized. So I think that really investigating how we can make that happen for all schools in the district and for all the children to have access to that would be important, because I think there was value. I think we learned a lot coming into this, that there is value in having technology as part of the school system. So I think really investing our time and energy learning to navigate through that more would be important. And obviously the social emotional wellness that our students and our teachers actually need after going through this tumultuous year and a half. I think we really need to do a lot more checking in with not just kids who are in that category that would normally need to see a counselor, but really every class, I think, needs to have some way of releasing all of this in a positive way and having that opportunity to voice out how they're feeling and also build community. And I think that'll come a lot from individual schools themselves.
What about you, Michelle? What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. When we come out of this, and this, of course, is not going to be over in a year, right? By the time we have a vaccine and it's distributed and implemented, I mean, we're talking, this is a long time that this is going to be around and affecting us, and the effects that it has on our kids now will have long-lasting effects. And so the things that Rachel was talking about, I think, are really important for us to focus on. And we've all heard this a million times, but this pandemic has really laid bare inequities that exist in our systems. And so it is an opportunity for us to try to fix those. And hopefully that if enough people are seeing it, for instance, the gap we have in mental health services and nurses and all of these other supports that we want all of our schools to have, perhaps there'll be the political will to make sure there is funding to and prioritize those kinds of services. We also have a massive budget situation happening in our district that will be happening for the next several years. And so we're going to have to stabilize that. We're going to have to work together to find more funding, locally, state, and federal. There's a lot of different ways we can do that, but that's something we're going to have to focus on during and after all of this to stabilize. And then we also are going to have to continue supporting our educators. We've had for a while issues around retaining and recruiting high quality educators. We found more funding for that in the past, but there's a lot more we need to do to support them as we're moving through and outside of this, especially with the economic impact that this is going to have on our communities. And we know how important having a stable, high quality teacher workforce in our schools is on the students in them. It's the schools that have the highest teacher turnover, the youngest teachers, newest teachers, those are in the schools where our kids are struggling the most. And so we have to address that. It's an ongoing thing, but it's something we'll have to address also.
Yeah, no, I've learned so much from sitting down here with the two of you, especially like your breadth of experience and what you have, all the work that you have put in to our public schools, and, even your experience as parents. I mean, one, it makes me feel like I'm not experiencing this alone, but also that, our conversation, I think, underscores even more that our neighborhood and our local conversations around education and in the time of this pandemic as we move forward, and then what the plan is post-pandemic, is something that I think uh, we can't stop doing, right? We need to keep talking about it, and we need to continue to um, solicit community input, as well as input from, teachers and paraeducators and our leaders who are so invested in this. And I think, I'm very grateful to both of you for spending the time today and sharing of your experience and your thoughts. And I also should plug our neighborhood summit, because we have an education working group, and Michelle is our co-chair for that. So if you'd like to get more involved in talking about this issue, I mean, we will be meeting about this throughout the campaign to really kind of hear from everybody in the Richmond about, what they're experiencing and what they think needs to happen so that we can transition into an environment that's safe for our teachers and our students. So thank you both very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you online. I wish we could see each other in person, but thank you both for your
Thank
time.
you for having the
Very
conversation.
welcome.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.